Hello, friends. My name is Marcus, and I'm here with George, and you are listening to I Know Nothing. Today on the podcast, we'll be talking about knife crime. And we are live on YouTube, George. This is our first recorded podcast. So for the new potential listeners, I Know Nothing is a progressive story about two normal guys trying to see beyond politics and money. We want to find the real facts behind the narrative, and George and I don't feel associated with the climate advocates for our day. So every Monday, we're documenting our journey to become more educated. If you feel like we've missed a point or side to an argument, then please let us know. Don't hesitate to call us out on our facts that we've claimed. We're always willing to change our view or to accept where we have made a mistake. So, without further ado, hello, George. How you doing, mate?
Not bad at all, Marcus. How are you? How's your week been?
Mate, really good. And I actually think that intro was also bloody fantastic.
If you do say so yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to say so myself, absolutely.
I agree.
But my week's been good, mate. There's nothing major that's happened. But after the last podcast, I did actually buy 2 more bins to finally start recycling. So that's a pretty positive start, actually.
Nice.
I think today oh wow, this is really interesting for all the listeners, but today I tried to get my hair cut and found out that my barber was actually on holiday. And it's never actually occurred to me that barbers take holidays, because I've always turned up and got my hair cut, you know.
Who'd think it?
Their shop was closed and I was like, oh wow, these guys live lives too. So interesting.
Wait, all of them were on holiday?
Mate, the whole shop was closed. It was really weird.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't trump your bin purchases, if I'm honest. So how come? What made you do that? Just talking about it.
So they were pretty cheap on. There's a store called Hamer in the Netherlands, and they were just pretty cheap, and just was like, yeah, I want to do it anyway. And it's actually pretty beneficial. Something that we didn't talk about in the last podcast was it allows me to take the bins out less, if that makes sense. Because you're not just filling up one bin full of, stuff that you can separate.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it.
Nice.
So how was your week?
Yeah, not bad. I sadly didn't achieve the lofty heights of buying recycling bins, but
You make me look like a saint, pal.
I know. I think you are. You've transcended. But I was about to throw away a plastic soup container today at work, just into the normal bin, and I looked down and saw this big recycling sign on the other bin, and I was like, okay, I should do this, because how can I go and make a podcast this evening about not about recycling, but about the environment, when I'm just chucking something so easy to recycle in the bin. So I went and washed it and then I threw it into the recycling bin. So, I mean, I know that's just a normal human being thing to do, but
a good human being thing to do, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm making baby steps. So that was a positive move, I feel.
And that's the whole point. I mean, even if we don't help anyone else make them have actions like we are doing, it at least puts us on, we've put it out there now. We have to actually follow through with some of the stuff that we're talking about. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, even if just you and I are slightly better for the environment out of this podcast, then it's been worth it, I think.
Well, yeah, it's 2 more people. Because, I
Good
think that with the YouTube audience now, we'll have people who haven't listened to the podcast before, and so it's just quickly to explain, we don't really do anything. And if you listen to the previous podcast, you'll find out that we don't actually know anything about how to be climate aware or act in terms of the climate. So that's really the reason for this podcast.
Absolutely. Otherwise, in my week, I sorted out a place to live for the next year, which is quite exciting. We've moved closer into central London, which is nice because it's just good to be closer to the big city. And
is that the goal for everyone who lives in Greater London?
I think it's a goal that you take on, even though it makes no difference. Really, I suppose I just want to be close to work. Really, that's all that matters. But I mean, I think it's in a nice spot, so that's good, and nice people as well. So I'm excited.
And are you going to be living with the same people?
I'm living with 3 other guys at the moment, and there's only going to be one. So Will. He's the only one I'm staying with. Max and Harry are going off on their own into a 2-bed.
No way.
A cheeky little working man's 2-bed. So
no way.
Yeah. However,
how was that conversation?
It never really had a conversation, I suppose. I mean, we sort of did. Yes. It was basically, I wasn't going to ditch Will. So initially, that's what I was just like. I'm not gonna. If you guys want to move into a smaller house, then fine. But I'm not going to ditch Will, so I'll find something with him. And then it turned out quite a few guys, funnily enough, from our school, Marcus, were also moving to London. So we're now living in a 6-person house next year.
Are you joking?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm not joking, sorry.
I'm going to
say yes.
Mate, you're going to have a whale of a time.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, still a big or reasonably sized room. I'm not giving up anything for that house. And if anything, it's better location and a slightly nicer house. So actually gaining a bit without spending any more. But it's going to be busy. I think the decision was between having a quiet space to live and not really seeing anyone when I got home, because Max and Harry, they work quite hard. So when they get home, they just eat and go to bed. If they've not already eaten. Whereas the other guys are just a bit more sort of, fill the space, and I think they'll be around. I mean, definitely 2 of them are still doing master's degrees, so they'll definitely still be around, I think. And that's just, I don't know, it's nice when you're around during the day or something.
And the nice the nice thing is you still get to see Max and Harry, because you're still just living in London, so you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
At university, I lived with 8 people in my second year, and I have to say that was so stressful, to the point where I actually, looking back at it retrospectively, I was actually a bit of a dick to all of them. Because,
or how, I suppose.
I don't know. I think it was difficult to get everything organized. Like, I was in charge of the bills, and chasing people for money was never fun, and it's not something that you just want to focus on and stress about, especially while you're at university. So I just got a bit horrible, I guess. I haven't got really anything else to say, but
I know what you mean. I think it can be tough, can't it? Especially when you feel like you're doing a lot of the work, and then people are just sort of chinning you off and not. It's so you're doing everything for them, and you're just like, just send me some money and I'll do everything else for you.
Yeah.
And then they can't even be bothered to do that.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I mean, having said that, I'm not. The housemates I'm with at the moment have actually been, I'd say, pretty good about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. They're not the type of people to be like that. But
no, but I think an 8-man house though, or 8-person house, that's intense.
It was crazy. However, the house parties were amazing. Oh my gosh.
I bet.
Sinks falling off, 2 rooms with massive speakers, etc. Everyone,
I remember. I feel like you Snapchatted one of your parties. I never made it to one, but I feel like you Snapchatted one of them, and that a lot. You got maybe, or am I wrong?
Yeah. Like, there was at least 200 people who went to this party. It was. I invited everyone. And it was just at the time when Snapchat allowed you to make your own location-based filters. And I was like, oh, we're getting on that. It cost us £4, etc. And it just, it just felt like, oh yeah, this is a great party.
This is the big time. That's cool.
It felt like, you ever watch that video of that Australian guy where he's got his glasses on and he's just like, yeah, it was a bloody amazing. The film
Project X.
The party that Project X was, yeah, exactly. That was based on.
Yeah.
I felt like that guy.
That's amazing. I've never quite felt like that guy. I feel like, I don't know if you ever came to one, I feel like we had some reasonably good parties in our second year flat.
Yeah. I did go to that. Yeah.
Which one did you come to?
I don't know if you remember, but I awkwardly introduced myself to this guy, and he said Ben, and I said no, I'm the other Asian, and he was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember.
Okay, that's another story.
Blocked it from my mind.
Yeah, it's so awkward. I thought because Ben is also Asian, and he's in our friendship group, and he obviously just misheard me, but I thought he was kind of making a quip, like a joke. And I was like, oh, that's sick. It seems like I already know you. So let's make a joke back. And I said, yeah, no, mate, I'm the other Asian. But he obviously was like, he's brought race into the conversation straight away.
Yeah.
So terrible.
I mean, I think that reflects poorly on him, not you, if I'm honest.
Not at all. I didn't read the social signs at all.
No, if you can't handle, if that guy can't handle like a nice light joke that's well within your sort of, your personal remit to to make jokes about, then why, But then again, if I just met someone and they crack something out like that, I might be, especially if I wasn't quite inebriated enough, then I might struggle to be like, oh.
Especially when I try to explain the joke afterwards.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You never want to explain a racist joke. It only gets worse.
Yeah.
I think something we should mention is, because we've spoken about YouTube, but we've also now got a website. I don't know if maybe you mentioned it briefly, but
no. You mentioned it, mate. It's your, you've always been great at this kind of stuff, so you should.
It's exciting. I mean, it's a fairly simple thing at the moment, but it puts us on the map in terms of having a legitimate website that you can visit. So it's either iknownothingpodcast.com or iknownothing.info. We're sadly not rich enough to purchase .com. It'd be nice to, but yeah, we don't have whatever the £2,000 is to buy it.
Well, that, I think not a lot of people understand, but domain names now cost so much money. I mean, it's not something that anyone would think of if they're not trying to make a website.
Yeah.
But this iknownothing.com, which is not our website, just to make that clear, not our website.
Don't go to that.
Don't get to that one. Cost $4,000 on one website that I saw. Yeah, it was crazy, mate.
The thing is, so just before we scare everyone off from ever buying a website, they are generally sort of, to at least buy a domain, it's about £10 a year, but depending on what the extension is. But there's these things called premium domains, and I don't know whether that means someone's bought them or whether it's that they've been identified as premium. I've not quite worked that out, but basically you have to pay way more to get them, and they're just randomly sort of evaluated at incredible. Well, I mean, I suppose for a business that wouldn't be an insane amount of money to pay, especially when business will easily spend like 10 grand just for a small business on a website. But for so two guys posting
two
random
average
stuff on
blokes.
the internet,
Two blokes.
Two average blokes. Yeah, it's just too much. I mean, I don't think we need to justify this to anyone. In fairness, I don't even know
why we're talking about it, to be honest.
No, who knows?
But iknownothingpodcast.com. That's where it's all going to pop off. Huh?
Yeah, so you can visit there now. It's got all of our episodes on. You can read about the episodes. You can also read the transcripts once they're up. They don't go up immediately, whereas the episodes will. And also you'll be able to watch all our YouTube videos on there as well. So it's a good place to go. And if you're listening to this and wondering, how to get in touch with us, or how to get onto our newsletter, how to receive a weekly email from us about the climate, etc., then just go there and you'll be able to find out.
George, you're going to have to answer this question. And, we haven't scripted this at all. But why did you get into web design and making websites?
Yeah, good question. I don't really know. I suppose it was an easy way to be creative without having to buy loads of things. Because once you've got the hosting and I think really I got into it initially through, the first one I ever did was, I made it with a friend, and we were cutting grass, and so we made a website for our grass cutting business of what car washing, and amongst other things that to be honest I can't remember anymore. But I think it was really just, I was probably 11 at the time. I was really,
mate. Yeah, you were
quite young actually.
I don't know if we're allowed to say because it might not even be alive anymore. But my Xbox Live was something that we both worked on. I mean, Of course, I was just a blogger, and you made the website. It was so interesting.
Yeah, so that's what came afterwards. I don't know how I ended up doing it. I cannot remember the reason, but ended up doing it. And it was, I was probably 15 at the time, but Marcus, you were one of the writers. There was a team of maybe up to 8 writers at a time from all over the world.
Yeah.
Crazy. I basically pretended that I was older than I was because I felt like nobody would accept me as a 15-year-old boy.
It's really interesting actually. I was going through my contacts, and one of the other writers is still in my contacts.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if you remember Richard, but he was from America.
Yeah.
Why do I have him in my contacts?
That's so weird.
Yeah. Really bizarre.
He's a cool story actually, because when he came and joined the website, he couldn't write. Yeah. As in, he didn't know how to formulate. So the first thing he wrote, it was
tough.
It was no capitals, all lowercase. There were no paragraphs, no full stops, and spelling mistakes everywhere. And this guy just put so much effort into firstly learning how to actually write, but then he got his wife to proof check it, and gradually because the first few times it came back and he'd be like, yeah, it's much better this time. We'd be like, it's not, it's really bad, in the nicest way possible. But and then eventually he got really good, and he was getting games sent to him from, so he was reviewing video games. He got games sent to him from companies, and like this guy, it was cool actually.
I didn't know that, and funnily enough, because of course LinkedIn looks at your contacts, etc., if you want to sync that up, and his profile came up, and I didn't connect with him. Obviously, I haven't spoken to him in 7 years, almost. Yeah, no, 9 years.
Wow.
And his job title is writer for this, I think.
No.
Yeah. He's a writer for a company now.
No way.
How amazing.
That's incredible. That's so cool.
That's really cool. I didn't know that either. I mean, weird.
That's
awesome.
Crazy.
Props to that guy.
Yeah, that is really cool. Just shows what you can. I mean, when he came, he was 45 years old or something. So it just shows it's never too late to go from literally not being able to write to being a writer and paid to do it. I assume. I mean, maybe who knows if he's actually paid to write? But sounds like it.
But what a good skill to start doing, website design, etc. It seems like anyone can do it.
I think it's quite intuitive, and it does. So we used WordPress for our website, and it's what I've always played with. I think, it seems intuitive to me, but maybe that's because I've been doing it since, I was 11 now. yeah, I think anyone can do it really, and especially with the advent of Wix and Squarespace and things like that, you don't even need to know how to code anymore to make a really quite good looking website. You just have to be willing to put in a bit of time to shape it right.
Careful, mate. They don't advertise on us yet, so let's scrap those guys.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, but they allow other people to get involved with that kind of stuff. You always read passive income, etc.
Yeah,
and so it allows those type of people to create a website of their own, sell some stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Do whatever. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think it's just a fun thing to do, even if it's quite difficult to create a website that actually is seen by anyone. It's just a fun thing to do, to know that it's out there, and it's an interesting skill to learn, I think, anyway.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, so do you think it's time we moved on to our topic for the week?
I think so. I think everyone's waiting hot on their seats.
Sort of, when are they going to stop talking about 11-year-olds designing websites? So this week, we're testing out a new concept. We're going to start off the conversation without having done any research at all, and we're going to see what the baseline is. So essentially, once we've vigorously confirmed how little we know about the topic, we'll then go on to research the real facts behind the topic, and on return, hopefully, we'll be well-informed individuals ready to educate the masses. It's going to be interesting, and if nothing else, a vivid display of our ignorance. But I think that it could potentially show how poorly understood some of the topics we talk about are. And I mean, maybe that's us assuming that everyone's like us, but realistically, I do think we're two fairly average guys. And so, not that you're average, Marcus. You're incredible. But at the end of the day...
yeah, thanks, mate.
At the end of the day, I think hopefully that's what it will show. It will show that there's a lot of misinformation, and when we really look through it, we realise that we knew very little before we properly looked it up. And maybe not, who knows? Maybe we know a bit about it, maybe we don't. We'll see.
So I think this is going to hopefully work out really well, because previously we've tried being ad-lib straight all through the podcast. And then now, the past few episodes, we have been scripting them a little. So already we've kind of done the research. So already we're starting to form opinions. Whereas with this one, it mixes both, and hopefully it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I've found hard, is when I've been talking about what I know already, because we try and obviously mix that in at the start, I've had to try and filter out the things that actually I learned whilst I was researching the topic, and it means that you get this weird sort of semi-dishonest...
Yeah.
Not dishonest, maybe that's a strong word for it, but it's not as accurate as I'd like it to be. So it'd be nice to get a true baseline for where we're at.
So let me then ask you, George, because you live in London currently, and
Indeed,
and that's kind of where all the news is centered around in terms of knife crime. I don't know the stats for any of it, but it's pretty astonishing, especially this year for some reason. Last year, of course, it wasn't newsworthy. It probably still happened, but this year it's been really hot on the news. So, have you experienced any knife crime or crime in general in London?
Not firsthand. There's definitely been, so my house in second year, I think 2 people died within sort of 100 meters of our house. Which, yeah, your face right now. I think that's maybe I didn't appreciate at the time. I don't know if that was knife crime though. I can't confirm or deny that. Then. But
it was homicide, manslaughter type case.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
One definitely was,
Oh,
but the
wow.
other one, I'm not so sure. There's still flowers up where this guy died. Yeah, so who knows? However, I think, to be honest, I've seen, Max got mugged on his way home once, and it's incredible. They didn't manage to take anything, which I still to this. I think there were 5 of them, which I still find to this day unbelievable, because he admits he just basically curled up on the ground and did very little, but just sort of tried to cling on and hope he didn't get hurt. And these guys didn't manage to take anything, which is so impressive, to be that bad at mugging that with 5 individuals you take nothing off this drunken bloke wandering home at night. So it's not that I've
That's crazy.
not been around anyone that's been mugged or anything, but I've not seen, I've not seen anyone getting a knife out, things like that. What about you?
Well, I mean, in the Netherlands, nothing like this happens. I mean,
Okay.
That's what it feels like. Honestly, so I moved out here last year. It is one of the cleanest and safest places I feel like I have been. Now, I don't know the statistics, but it has that aura, where it just feels safe.
That's good.
Don't know why, but yeah, you don't hear or see any of that. Now, I don't really live in the center of Amsterdam or Rotterdam, but I know there's a lot of football hooliganism.
Okay,
which,
interesting.
There was a huge problem actually in the previous years in the Netherlands when it came to hooliganism with football, because Feyenoord and Ajax absolutely hate each other.
Right.
To the point where some of their songs are like anti-Semitic, like gas the Jews, etc.
Whoa.
Yeah, really hardcore, mate. So, of course, in World War II, a lot of Jewish people were living in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So, Feyenoord, of course, then just started shouting that. Now, this was
That's pretty shallow.
This was back in, 2004, 2005, I think.
Okay.
So, now that would never, I guess, be the case, but they've got beef, definitely.
That's heavy. But, so basically, other than that, though, very little knife crime.
No.
Football hooligans as bad as it gets.
I've just realised this podcast is going to have very little laughter. There's not going to be many jokes in this podcast.
You'd sort of hope not, in a way. Which, yeah, sorry for any listeners that were hoping this would be, I don't know, funny, or at least us laughing at our own jokes.
Yeah, self-deprecating at least.
Yeah. Because, yeah, maybe we haven't, it's not got heavy yet. Well, maybe we'll be okay. But I feel
it's
like
not got heavy yet. You just told us that 2 people died outside your house.
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy.
You make a good point. I don't think I've ever appreciated the reality. I suppose it never felt like that meant I was in danger, because I don't know why it didn't feel like I was in danger.
Are you aware of it? Do you feel like you
No.
have to be alert? No.
No. So I've never felt unsafe walking home at night. I've never felt unsafe walking around in the day. I don't feel unsafe in London. I can imagine in certain parts of London I would. But no, not where I live and not where I frequent.
Yeah. But like on a night out or anything? No?
No, I mean, I suppose at that point I'm drunk and
You've
then
got
who
Dutch
knows?
courage.
Yeah, indeed. But I also just think that I don't go out in any weird, like, underground dark places, and so there's not really any reason that I would come across anyone particularly nasty. I suppose they can be anywhere, but I don't feel any less safe in London than I do elsewhere.
Okay. So, I guess with that being said, why do you think then it is on the news so much, and what do you think is the cause for it?
So I think part of it is, I don't know whether and this is a chicken and egg sort of thing that I'm about to bring up, but the whole police cuts versus knife crime. So I don't know whether people are using knife crime as a flashpoint for arguing that there should be more police, or whether because knife crime is a real issue at the moment, people are arguing there needs to be more police. I suppose probably realistically it's knife crime is on the up, so people are saying we need more police. But I feel like it's getting a lot of media attention because some politicians are trying to use this as and not that that's a bad thing, but they're trying to use this to gain more police in London. At the end of the day, it's kind of ironic actually that Boris Johnson's Prime Minister now, but he was the one. Oh, did he cut police actually? I don't know. I know he cut the fire service, or at least tried to cut it quite dramatically when he was Mayor of London, and then justified it as. Have you ever seen the clip of him being questioned about it?
No, I haven't.
So, in fairness, I haven't watched the whole clip, so I might have sort of misread the context. But they are so, you're cutting the fire service, right? And he's like, no. And they're like, but you're reducing numbers dramatically. You're getting rid of X number of fire stations and X number of personnel. He's like, yeah, but we're making it better. And they're like, what? What do you mean? It's like, well, we're making it more efficient. And it's just like, come on, Boris. It's like, you're not making it better. You're trying to save a bit of money. Let's be honest here. But just it's incredible watching someone be like, we're making it better by cutting 10,000 jobs. There won't be that many, but you know what I mean.
But I've always heard that it was not that bad under Boris's so-called reign as Mayor of London, whereas with Sajid. Oh, it's not Sajid Javid. That's probably quite racist, actually, what I've just said.
Close.
Who is the London mayor? I apologise. I don't live there anymore. I don't live in the UK. I don't care.
Yeah, it was an easy mistake to make.
It's just Sajid Javid is obviously in the news recently because he's just come out and said that he's going to spend an extra £2 billion on Brexit.
Yes, and also the Mayor of London is Sadiq Khan, which
again, quite racist. That
their names are similar. That's not racist.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's like
I'm just very nervous because
Marcus and Martin, and
I'm just very nervous because I'm on YouTube now. You know, behind closed doors, I'd happily be like, yeah, all right, yeah, they do sound the same. I'm worried. I'm scared.
It's okay to say something sounds phonetically similar.
Is it though, George? Is it?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
If we can't have that, because Marcus and Martin are similar, and if I mumbled Marcus, no, that still sounds like Marcus. But you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. But so back to the point. What has been said, what I have read, is that it's gotten worse under Sadiq Khan.
Interesting.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I think I have seen that it's going back up, and so I suppose I could guess that therefore it's worse under Sadiq. But I mean, I hadn't attributed it to him, in fairness.
Well, I mean, you know, the problem with these podcasts, mate, is that all these issues and topics are so complex that it's really hard to just simplify it by saying that, yeah, it's because of police cuts or because of whatever, because there's so many social reasons that, you know, someone turns to knife crime. That's outside of government policies, etc. And so we would be doing an injustice to the topic if we didn't acknowledge the fact that it's more complex than probably this podcast is going to explain.
Of course, yeah, that's a very good point. But at the end of the day, neither of us, I think, ever suggest that we're going to get to the bottom of things on this podcast.
No,
it's
and
just about.
Hopefully, the title explains that.
Yeah, we started pretty strong in our sort of, what's the word, when you give yourself a lot of leeway for failure.
Yeah.
We set the bar low.
Yeah, for sure. Which is amazing because that allows us to say anything that we want and turn around and say, "Oh yeah, but I don't know fucking anything." So what are you gonna do?
Sat here pretending to do a podcast about sustainability and trying to pretend that we knew what we were talking about. Imagine how bad that would be.
I've always been pretty bad at acting, actually. But I'm a pretty good liar, like I said last time.
I'm a terrible liar.
Mate, you see, when my mum used to be like, oh, wow, that's 6 podcasts in a row mentioning my mother.
Yeah.
But when
it's always going to happen.
When my mum would be like, yeah, what time did you sleep, etc., I'd be like, oh, yeah, like 10 o'clock. But in reality, it was like 3 in the morning.
Oh, that's okay, though. That's like a small lie to your parents. Like, yeah, I did that.
Oh.
I don't think they ever believed me. But...
Oh, no, my mum... Oh, actually, in reality, maybe they didn't believe me at all.
Yeah.
It just seemed like...
Oh, yeah,
just
Marcus.
Like, yeah, right, yeah.
Definitely didn't hear you sneaking up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, damn.
I tried to lie the other day. It was a weird one because I was with a group of people and someone... Basically, what I've been trying to do is some sort of endurance sport, and one of the coaches, basically all the coaches are very hot on injuries, and they really don't like, and this is maybe reflects badly on me, but they really don't like you carrying on if you've got an injury. They'll really push you out, and we were very close to the end of what we were training for, and so I basically had a bad foot. I still do, which isn't great because this was a while ago now. But this guy, he was running a session and we were doing sprints, and I was like, look, I don't think I should be doing these sprints. I've got a bad foot. And he asked, oh, it was so bad. He was like, how long's it been going on for? I was like, I can't remember how long I said, but I think I said,
terrible at lying. You are so bad.
I'm bad at recounting lies, let alone telling a lie. But I basically dug this hole where I told him one thing, then I had to go back up to him because I realized. So what the problem is when I lie, it's almost like they flash before my eyes all the different ways that I could be found out for having lied. And so I was like, oh no.
Oh, wow. That's terrible.
Then,
you need to remove that out of your head.
I know, but it was because obviously really no one else is thinking about it enough to really probably and also it's such a small thing. But I was like, because basically if they'd found out I was lying, there's this whole big thing about integrity, even though all the other guys there knew that I was injured. So all the other guys training knew I was injured. So it wasn't like I was lying to everybody. It was just this one individual. And basically I was worried that he'd have pulled me out of training right before the end if I'd admitted it. And so, it was so bad though, because he kept asking questions, but then, it just got so awkward, and yeah, it was so bad. And after that, I realised that it was almost nice to realise how bad at lying I am. My girlfriend, she often accuses me of lying.
Really?
Not like seriously, as in sort of joking, like I don't believe you. But what she doesn't realise is that I just don't lie to her.
Oh.
Yeah, I just
George,
don't.
the good boyfriend.
No, but I just can't because it's this thing where like I just see how it's all I'm gonna get found out, even though it's always obscure and weird. So I just don't do it. I just don't lie about things. I'm just like sometimes too honest, and sometimes that goes terribly for me. Yeah. And so sometimes it's a negative, but I do, yeah. How did we get onto this?
We were talking about how it'd be awkward if we were trying to lie about knowing about sustainability.
Yes. I'm glad you're keeping track.
That was a huge tangent, actually.
Yeah, it was.
That was huge. And I could have actually carried it forwards by saying that it's something that, telling the truth, funnily enough, is something that I've had to work on in recent months, maybe years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I just have a lot of insecurities.
Me too, mate.
Previously.
Sure.
Less so now because you're telling the truth.
Insecurities. Everyone has insecurities.
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
It's just whether I think it's some people, yourself for example, realize they have these insecurities and start to work on them, and some people don't, and they live life affected by these insecurities without ever making a difference to them.
Well, I have to say, just being truthful with yourself allows you to be truthful to others, full stop. but that means that you have to acknowledge all those insecurities and all those failures in your
it's a difficult thing to do.
persona in your life. It's really difficult. It was really difficult.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we should talk about that in another podcast because, you know...
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one.
Yeah, I think so, because mental health and all of that is something that is on topic, and it would be interesting to see if we can break it down.
Yeah. I think the fact that we have hit such a heavy tangent maybe suggests that we have absolutely nothing to say on night. You live...
We got found. We got found out.
You live in apparently the safest place, or must be in the top 5 safest places in the world.
Yeah.
And I live in somewhere that basically I apparently just ignore the fact that people die on my street. And so I'm completely oblivious to what's happening, apparently, because I clearly just am not aware of it, even though it's something very, very close to home, quite literally. Not. So I think it's something we need to know a bit more about. And so I think... Sorry,
before you take the break, I think my first conclusion, my first thought would be, from living in the UK to now living in one of the richest countries in the world, the Netherlands, I think poverty plays a huge role in the reason why people want to commit crimes with knives, etc.
Very interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's quite difficult socially. If you are born into a position where you're not well off or you're poor, it's very difficult. And I know this from experience. It's very difficult to think about anything else apart from money and where your next meal is going to come from.
Sure.
And so now, the benefit that I had with some of my experiences is the fact that I could see the end of the tunnel because, you know, my family have been well off previously. And then, of course, things went south. But I always knew that there was still hope, that you could still get back on your feet. Whereas if you're born into that position...
Yeah, it's the norm.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course... You know, with society nowadays, everyone's consuming way too much and everyone's got flash cars and people are making money very quickly. And so I think when you're focused on money and when you're focused on food, etc., and you're really just trying to survive, you're basically surviving mentally and physically.
Yeah.
I think... And then when you start seeing all this stuff with money, etc., you then turn to crime for someone.
Sure.
And then you, on the other hand, you've got someone who doesn't want to turn to crime at all, but is very aware of their surroundings and the fact that they need to almost defend themselves. And because they've been born into that situation and they don't know anything different, it's very easy to then pick up a knife and feel safer because you don't know any different. That's my initial thought.
I think that's an interesting take on it. Yeah.
I think poverty plays a huge role. And you know, the reason why I wanted to talk about this as a topic, George, isn't to do with just knife crime and how to solve it, but in terms of a bigger picture, I always find it really outrageous when activists are saying we all need to do better, etc. But it seems very middle class when they say that, because you've got people who are really worried about their lives to the point where they have to carry a knife around the city of London or wherever. Yeah. And then also on top of that, they don't even know where their next meal is going to come from. Yeah.
And so the last thing they're worrying about really is putting rubbish in the right bin
or whatever. Yeah.
What a wonderful. It all. I mean, at the end of the day, it's sad that we're at a stage now where climate change is such a big issue. But what a wonderful world to live in, where one of the biggest problems you and I have to face on a daily basis is how we are affecting the planet.
Yeah. And actually that goes back to why, even the fact that we are able to do this and make a podcast and make a website,
Yeah.
regardless of how many people listen to us or how many people are subscribing to us or whatever, I'm so grateful. I really am, because, the time that my family were, again, I think it's almost an insecurity when it comes to money with myself, but, it happened in my life where my dad quit his job and couldn't find anything really. And so he was on the dole, welfare, for a little bit. And really, mate, it's next level stress. You don't, I don't know if you've ever gone through something similar, but yeah, I'm just eternally grateful that I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah, I think to be fair, well, I don't want to compare what my family went through with yours or anyone else.
And I would never be offended if you even were about to say anything, because I don't think that anyone is comparing with anything about any of it. It's just experiences that we've all been through.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, you're right. I think the difference for me was my parents suffered in order to shelter me and my sister from the reality of their financial situation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there was a point where, I think after the financial crash, the banks were essentially increasing the repayment rate of small business loans to the point that they couldn't pay them back. They would then have the right to evaluate the property or valuate the property and then buy it off them, and the small business owner wouldn't have a choice.
And obviously evaluate at a very, very low rate as well.
Exactly. Yeah, good point. Exactly. Like so we're talking, I don't know exactly how much lower, but orders of magnitude lower, or at least sort of 25% of the real property price. Kind of incredibly low valuations, and then they would buy it off them and then sell it for 3 times the price. Yeah. And my dad managed to fight this, and it's come to the point now where I think the banks have had to pay. They've had to pay out quite a lot to essentially make up for what they did, because it was just it was completely unacceptable what they did, and it's been as far as I know. I suppose the problem. Well, I was about to say it's been sorted, but I think a lot of people weren't as lucky and weren't able to cling on like my dad was to the business. So yeah, but it's not the same as what you went through. But because I think my parents were just had enough that they could sacrifice their own what they had in order to make sure that I was sheltered from it.
It's really interesting. So we have had fairly similar experiences, but my parents didn't shelter me from this. They had the open door approach of explaining what was going on.
Yeah.
And I'm super grateful with that, because it's opened my eyes in terms of how happy they were when a lot of their stress, as in possessions, were sold off, etc. And so for me, the fancy car and fancy house, etc., doesn't really affect me as it does with other people, because I know what it can do to someone when it all goes south.
Sure. Yeah.
But what I would say separately is that these effing bankers, these fucking bankers, right? The audacity, and no one went, it didn't seem like anyone went to jail. It didn't seem like anyone got punished or anything of that nature. And to be frank, my dad used to work in an investment bank, not as an investor or anything of that nature.
No.
But he was at the belly of the beast, and these guys, doing all this crap, and I don't really know too much about it. But then to have the audacity to then say, yeah, we're going to buy your property at such a lower rate than what it's actually valued at. and shaft you again is unbelievable. So audacious.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It is incredible, and it's sad that's what it came to.
Well, I think this is a great place to pause and take a break, research some stuff, and go again.
I agree.
Cool. All right. Hello, everyone. We're back. We actually had to come back and pause because we needed a laugh, one, and two, do a bit of research. So, George, what did you find?
I'm going to kick us off with some facts just to lay the foundation of our journey of discovery. Depressing discovery. So since 2014, England and Wales have seen a rise from 25,000 incidents of knife crime to over 40,000 incidents, I think in 2018, I want to say, which is quite a lot. The vast majority of these incidents are robberies and assaults, so I think it's something like 90% of these knife crime incidents are robberies and assaults. But to put that in perspective, while knife crime is on the rise and violent crime, so while knife crime is on the rise, only 6% of violent crimes are actually involving knives, and 79% involve no weapon at all. And the stats suggest that while overall levels of violent crime are decreasing, serious violent crime rates are going up. So it's a weird one where the rate of crime isn't increasing, the rate of violent crime isn't increasing, but knife crime in particular is. So that's an interesting point to start on, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that is crazy, really, to almost double the amount of incidents of knife crime. The thing that is always on the news are these moped gangs, and just gangs in general. But it almost feels like they found a loophole where a police car is not allowed to forcefully stop a moped, of course, because it endangers the user.
Although I thought they had allowed that.
I don't know. Actually, I
yes,
apologise.
So I think in some cases police have been trained to actually take down moped drivers.
Okay, that's good. That's good. But still, regardless, the amount of knife crime is worrying. Actually, I think one of the things that I read up on just now is the fact that these gangs have a scoring-based system. They call it scores.
Which gangs?
Well, just London-based gangs. It didn't really say
particular
London-based gang.
Okay.
But I think it's not an inter-gang. It's it's a on the streets type scoring-based system. So every gang is almost involved with it. This is what this guy said, and the way that it works is you get more points for how brave you are, and if you stab someone in the neck, you get X amount of points, and if you stab someone in the chest, you get X amount of points, and it's basically some kind of macho scoring based system, and it's actually really fucking sick. The fact that you've almost turned violence into some kind of game, like real life GTA.
Yeah. I mean, that's nuts. I almost wonder if that must be pretty isolated as a thing. That can't be particularly widespread across London gangs, because that's messed up. Gangs exist for all sorts of reasons, I imagine. I'm not part of one, so I have no idea. But let's be honest. But that's some next level shit.
Yeah. So I mean, hopefully it's isolated, but from and I guess to try and merge the two facts together, the ability to make something as terrible as not, knifing someone into a game would obviously increase the amount that it happens if you follow my train of thought. But regardless, it's just pretty sick, and I don't really know. After looking at this source, I don't even know if more policing would even help that kind of issue, knowing that people are making games out of it, i.e. voluntarily taking part.
I mean, I think I think that must be fairly isolated, and because that just cannot be that in terms of the grand scheme of things. That's some sick individuals. So I don't think that it's necessarily a question of policing and things like that, because it must be isolated.
Yeah, but so this guy was basically saying that there's always been these type of ranking systems where you'd almost even in the army, you'd almost be getting stripes and stuff for the stuff that you do, the type of crimes that you're committing.
Yeah. Right.
So
wow.
I mean, when reading this news article, the guy who was from the streets explaining it seemed to know what he was talking about and seemed to have a broad, it happens in all of these gangs. It's kind of like that hidden rule that's unspoken, but it's kind of what happens. So maybe maybe it is isolated. I don't particularly know. I just read something on the internet, which doesn't count for anything really. But even if it is an isolated case, that is still pretty crazy that someone, even one person, making a game out of that is mental. And
absolutely,
of course. And the question that I have is, with that being said, how many more police do we need to solve this kind of issue?
In terms of violent crime, specifically knives, or this issue of people with a ranking based system.
Well, I apologize. I think I'm really thinking in a more of a broader issue other than knife crime. I think what I've just said is kind of makes sense in terms of knife crime, but they can also not be the same. It could just be crime in general. But I think in terms of knife crime, the lack of morality, and not morale, by the way. This time I'm using morality in the right sense. But the lack of morality is something that I don't think that the police can change. And so I'm just saying that from what I just said, from what we spoke about in the very first bits of the podcast, that we need more police, I'm then asking how much more police if people are just willy-nilly making games out of the issue.
Sure, yeah. I think it's an interesting point, and realistically, once someone's in a gang where they've got a points-based system, they're sort of beyond the police, really. I'd say, okay. That's gone beyond, and so I think it comes back to an earlier stage. You've got to solve the problem earlier on. So young people are at the moment being affected more. It's dramatically increased the number of young people being injured, so under the age of 24, in knife crimes. And at the end of the day, I think that the reason they end up in these situations is because they are essentially being stigmatized.
Yeah.
That what they have to say isn't being listened to, and then there's a disconnect and lack of trust that's creating a further divide, and it's leading them to end up in toxic environments that then lead on to these gangs, etc. So we need to divert them away from toxic environments where they have a lack of incentive to achieve things that are seen as societally acceptable, and to do things that are more productive towards society.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think what I need to explain is that I don't necessarily believe that. Well, of course, I believe that more policing has to be done, and that the lack of policing would obviously increase the issue. But I guess that's not what's happening at the moment. I think we are reducing the police funding. Do you have any facts on that at all?
Well, so wait, just on that point, because I don't know whether maybe I didn't explain what I was trying to say properly, but I was agreeing with you in terms of the police not being the problem, I'd say, and the problem is earlier than the stage where people become where the police need to step in.
Yeah,
do you disagree?
No, I always don't like these blame society type answers.
But it's not about blaming society. It's about blaming the fact that £422 million less has been spent in the last 6 years. There's been a reduction of that much, and 130,000 less spaces in youth centres. This idea of trying to say that we shouldn't blame society, it's not blaming society, it's blaming spending of councils and governments on the youth, on the youth of today, and those numbers are pretty visceral. And at the end of the day, if there's less youth centres, and I've listened to people on the news and on podcasts talking about the issue that these centres are shutting down, these kids aren't getting access to productive environments where they're given role models, given productive things to do, and taught
I totally agree,
ways to interact with society when they're from disaffected communities. These for you and I, youth centres, it's not something I think we've appreciate. We were part of a great school that looked after us, and part of essentially somewhere with a really productive youth system. But in places where the communities are far more disaffected and basically have serious social disadvantage and disinvestment, youth centres are incredibly important.
I mean, I totally agree. And what I would add to that is the fact that I think solving this issue, you need that foundation of the ability to go to youth centres and increase of funding the police. And then you can then say, hey, look, the onus is on the individual. But it's very difficult now to say, no, the problem is with these kids when we're not actually supporting them already.
Exactly. But I don't think you can ever blame children for how they end up.
No, you're right. You're right.
Oh, I mean, maybe, I don't know, there must be somewhere where the individual becomes responsible. I don't know what age or what point, but at the end of the day, I think if you never give young people the opportunity to end up in a toxic environment, then it's going to be much more difficult for them to become part of these crazy gangs.
I think it was interesting. One of the facts that I read was in 2008, it was noted that the youth clubs across England had a reduced funding of £206 million from 2015 compared to 2015.
Yeah, it's huge.
Which is huge.
And that is an unbelievable amount of money when we're talking about youth centres.
And it kind of correlates to the amount that you said at the beginning, where knife crime has almost doubled.
Especially amongst young people.
Yeah. And
I think one thing about the police is that I think it's not a big. I imagine a big part of the problem is the trust in police and the relationship that police have with these disaffected communities. And so I'm sure that they are making every effort to do this, but building that trust, so spending more not on policing and stop and searching, what's the word, when you target someone for who they are.
What? Targeted.
Begins with a D.
Oh. Oh.
What's the word?
I don't know. It's coming out of your head. You tell me what the word is.
Wait, I feel like you know what
What
the word is. You just don't want to say it.
No, I don't know the word.
Oh, you don't know.
Directed stop and search.
Oh, the listeners are definitely just...
They've
they know
tuned
exactly
out.
what I'm trying to say.
They've tuned out now.
No, wait. When you're all right, we'll forget the word. When you're targeted for who you are, and then stop and searched for those reasons. So basically, the London Met apparently did basically have this gang matrix, and the majority of people that are part of gangs in London are black, and so they started targeting young black men for stop and searches. And obviously that's not how you increase trust. You increase trust by spending more and investing in community policing, where police try and build the relationships that they need with these people so that they feel safe and like they can turn to them if they need to. I don't know. I suppose it's a much, but that's oversimplifying the issue. Obviously,
again, this is the problem that we face, and that what we said at the beginning. But it's interesting because I have some friends who are in the police, and they're not the type of people to target certain types of people based on
discrimination.
Oh, wow, really? That was the word you forgot?
That was the word.
Oh my gosh, I thought it was harder and a bit more intense than that. Discrimination.
I knew you'd know it. I couldn't remember.
Wow, classic. You would forget discrimination, wouldn't you? You're racist.
Wow.
No. What was I saying? I was saying the fact that it goes back to the first podcast, and I didn't really explain myself, where I said that I don't think people are generally bad people. I think the nuances around certain things affects someone's ability to think and affects their actions. And so you see these police people partying with minorities all the time, Notting Hill Carnival, etc., and having a whale of time, increasing trust, etc. I feel that the talking about race and those type of discriminatory stop and searches aren't... I don't really know where I'm trying to go with this one. But I personally don't think that the police are intentionally doing it, because I don't think that police are generally
the individuals. Exactly. Maybe
that's
not.
What I'm saying.
But that doesn't mean that the police as a whole aren't doing that. I mean, it's just not that it's always happening, but it has happened in the past, and it does happen. Like, as in, I'd never knock the police. I think a lot of people, my mum for some reason, I think, distrust the police for whatever reason. I think there used to be far more problems.
She's a criminal living on that island that takes 3 days to get to.
Yeah, she's going to hate me for saying that on the internet. But I think because there used to be a lot more problems in the police.
I apologise, George's mum, by the way. I don't think you're a criminal at all. I take back everything I said about that. Only jokes, folks. Only jokes.
I think it's because basically there used to be a lot more corruption in the police than there is now, and you and I have not really experienced that. But basically, I think at the end you're right that individuals in the police aren't like that, but the police often are seen as a body, and those individuals end up being sort of dragged into that for the actions that they're made to do. So I don't know. I mean,
And
I think it's just an example. The discriminatory searching, I think it's just an example. However much, I don't know how much it happened, but it's something that it doesn't build trust. It breaks down trust and it makes people feel targeted. And like the police aren't there to serve them.
And I will just focus on that point that you made, George, where you talk about the police as a body is the thing that people are against, or maybe are doing the wrong actions. And maybe, therefore, that these gangs as a body are the things that are causing the wrong actions. But actually, on an individual basis, you could probably talk to them just fine, and they're not like that type of people at all. And the problem that we have right now as a society is that we're always grouping people together in a body. And then basically saying that this body is doing this wrong and this body is doing this wrong, and it doesn't help the situation at all. I'm a huge
interesting point.
I mean, I'm a huge believer in talking to the person in front of me and assessing what they're like, rather than, oh, you come from this background, you must be this type of person. I think this whole group identity politics is really it's a problem at the moment.
It's damaging, isn't it? I think something I have to drag us into is that knife crime is not only a problem in London, and that's something we've not said yet. And we've also definitely suggested, with the way we've been talking, like it's just a problem in London. But it is. It's actually so not.
It is.
Wait, what?
No, I'm trying to make a joke, George. Right, I'm trying to liven up the podcast. I don't know what I'm doing.
And I'm just dragging us back down.
So hard. You know, we talked about that certain topic in the last podcast that we won't repeat because we'll go down a tangent. And then we said, oh, we have to go back to recycling. Yeah. Some of the listeners have also replied and saying, oh, that was going so well that, you know, we do drag it to the point where it's like, oh, do we have to? But carry on. Sorry, George.
So I think it's really important though to mention this, that knife crime is increasing dramatically all around England and Wales. And actually, I think 2017 to 18, knife crime only went up by 1% in London. However, it went up by 30-40% in other places. So while London is the highest per 100,000 and overall, it's only the highest per 100,000 by a bit. So per capita, it's, I mean, maybe I think it was around 150 or so, plus or minus 10 for London. And Manchester and the West Midlands were only about 20 behind. So this is a massive problem outside of London. It's interesting, and it's not something that I researched in that break, but I just remembered that it was Glasgow that was one of the most violent places to live in Europe. I'm pretty confident. Although I was reading that they've solved some of that. I don't know how, to what extent.
This is where I'm going.
Sorry.
No, it's not a problem. So yeah, they had a huge problem with this, and it's funny that we talk about underfunding, but due to increasing their funding of youth services and education and building trust with the police force, it has dropped down so dramatically, which is amazing to hear. That's really wow! Cool. How have we got a positive? I feel kind of happy.
That's good. It is good, and it shows that maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel for the rest of England, or the rest of the UK, England and Wales.
And it goes back to what I said earlier, where I said I was brought up in a position where my family were wealthy, then we weren't, but it was okay because I knew that there was light at the end of the tunnel. And I think, you know, if there is anyone listening out there who is involved in these gangs, etc., that there is light at the end of the tunnel. If I can't exactly say how to get there. I don't really know any of it, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel with everything. Where in any hard scenario or situation, there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's just also a matter of not going back down that dark road again once you're out of the tunnel. You see it all the time. I mean, I quite like, grime music and things of that nature. And there's that artist, Jay Huss. And he seems to always be going back to prison for carrying knives. And it's like this guy's, popping off on iTunes, etc., making some money, making a name for himself, going to festivals, etc., headlining. And then he goes back to prison for carrying a knife. And it's like, once you're out, just stay out.
Yeah, I suppose it's hard for us to say.
I know. I feel very condescending. No, it's true though, and I think so. What I did research, George, was that there is a podcast, not a podcast, a YouTube channel called Chris Preddy OBE. So he's got an OBE, and he is actually a minority who used to live in the streets, and he kind of got out that situation, and he's kind of promoting and sharing his message of just get out. It's not as hard as you think, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. And so maybe with me being a little condescending, and I hate myself for it, the ability that he's gone through that experience allows the message to be maybe a bit more heard.
Yep.
So yeah, go check out his YouTube channel.
For sure.
Nice. For sure.
Well, I think it'd be good to try and summarize the conclusions that we've come to.
Thank God.
So for me, I think the big takeaway points were that I suppose maybe I assumed this, maybe I didn't, but I think it's important to note that young people are affected the most in the UK by knife crime. This is throughout the UK and not just in London. And that basically, I suppose you and I both feel that what really is going through the news at the moment isn't necessarily the solution. So increased funding for police is definitely something that I feel should happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to, on its own, solve the problem that we're facing and the crisis that the news and the media are getting in an uproar about.
Yeah, and adding to that, taking it down a different road, all these crises are complex. And when you've got a complex problem, it doesn't take simple solutions. That's the reason why we are doing this podcast. One, to think for ourselves, but also to maybe spark thought with you, the listener, and think of solutions yourselves too, because these problems are complex and they require complex solutions.
Absolutely. I like what you wrote about what can we do.
Yeah.
Because there isn't a lot, is there? So Marcus has essentially written that. In fairness, a lot of what we've just spoken about wasn't scripted. If anyone was wondering, we speak sometimes about that we script a little bit, and realistically, the majority of that, you can probably tell. I probably don't need to say this, but it was unscripted, and so I think it just went to show how tough this topic is, like you just said, Marcus, and it's difficult to know what we can do as individuals, but at the end of the day, we are in a position to focus on. You and I are lucky enough that we can focus on sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about knife crime where you live, and I apparently ignore it. And also, if I'm honest, I don't live in the most affected areas of London. So we're lucky that we can focus on other things. As we said before, e.g. sustainability.
Yeah, and
So,
I think we, the one thing that we need to take away from this podcast, and the one message that I want to spread throughout this podcast, is being totally grateful for the position that you are in, no matter what position that is, and the fact that you're not in a position where you have to be affected by knife crime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be good to, we've not come up with them, but it'd be good to come up with some challenges before we move on, talking about being a little bit more sustainable. Let's come up with a challenge each to add to that focus on sustainability.
In terms of what? Be more grateful?
I mean, I'm not going to challenge you to be more grateful. Because I think you are. I think
Yeah.
How lucky you are. So I don't think I need to challenge you to do that. But I think I don't know what I'm going to challenge you to do. I challenged you before, for those that haven't heard previous podcast episodes, to pick up, I think it was 1 piece of litter a day and put it in the bin. So following on from that train of thought, I was about to suggest something, but I think it's terrible because I think it might be an arsehole thing to do. I was going to say, and it's a bad idea. I'm just going to tell you for the sake of it. So I was going to say, such a bad idea. There's thinking on the spot for you.
I've got mine.
Oh wow, okay. Clean. So I was going to say,
clean your room.
No, your mum was over recently. I'm sure you've been told enough that.
Yeah.
So 5 employees at work.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, now I'm thinking I could take this somewhere, but I was just going to say, just on their desk, like if there's like some rubbish, just go and take it to a recycling bin. But you can't do that because it's such.
that is the worst. Clean up someone else's mess.
Yeah.
Are you actually going to challenge me that or what?
No. This is why I prefaced that with a load of, oh god, it was awful. Go on, go with. So I when you mentioned being grateful, there's a quote I really like, and it's from Marcus Aurelius, and it's, when you arise in the morning, think what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love.
He was a great Stoic. Fun fact for you.
Yes, indeed.
So if you have not learnt anything from that podcast, at least you know that Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic. So there you go. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But yes, your challenge, George. Or shall I give you your challenge?
What's your challenge for me?
So, I need you to find... hopefully you have a spare bin. If not, fine. Find another container that's semi-bin size. It can be kind of small. Fill it up with your recycled waste. I know sometimes you have the excuse that your housemates don't do anything, but you can do something.
None of them are here at the moment. I have no excuse.
Right, so you can do something. Fill it, through the week. If you can't fill it up, then great, you're not using that much. But if you are using a lot, fill it up with the things that we've talked about in the previous podcast with recycling.
Nice. I like that. Okay. That is done.
And yours?
Do you ever get the bus or train? Not the train, the bus in Amsterdam, or where you like to work?
I cycle to work, mate.
You cycle to work? Yeah. You live in the Netherlands.
It's so nice. So nice.
And I'm not gonna I can't really do transport because the only options, because you don't ever. Because for me, you could be like, next time you're gonna get on the tube, just walk or cycle or whatever. But I feel like for you, I can't do that.
It's really interesting actually though. A separate point, how the Dutch society has focused on, naturally I'm doing some good stuff and I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good
back
point.
to your point.
Okay, so here it is. I want you to go and make sure tonight and for the next till we speak again, when you go to bed, make sure that you haven't got anything left on unnecessarily. So like plugs, things like that. And if you do, I want you to tell me.
You gonna go with that one?
Yeah, I think that's
All right.
okay.
All right.
I
No,
leave
no,
stuff
I'm just
on all the
asking.
time. I leave stuff on all the time.
I'm just asking.
That's the final answer.
Here's a really interesting fact, George.
Yeah.
The European plugs don't actually have switches, so you have to pull out the plug. It's all right. I'll just pull out the plug. That's not a problem.
Cool.
Yeah, that's fine. But it was just something that you should know.
Man, everything's so different.
So the challenges are set for next week.
Yeah, the challenge is set for next
Okay.
week. So, what was I doing again? Oh yeah, getting a bin, filling it with my recycling.
Yeah. So make a conscious
Awesome.
effort. And I think
Cool.
what we'll do is we'll try and wrap this up quickly, the rest of the podcast, because it's already an hour and
Wow.
26
Wow.
minutes.
Yeah.
Now, this part of the podcast is where we talk about how the climate is doing. It's like a little update section, not like the news, but some good and bad bits of news. So, George, do you want to read out what the good is?
Sure. So the good. Ethiopia has broken a world record by planting more than 350 million trees in 12 hours. That's a lot. So the original goal was 200 million trees in a day. Wow. But they smashed it and did 350 million in 12 hours.
Yeah.
And in total, they aim to plant 4 billion trees.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's the first thing, outrageously, the first thing that came up to my mind when I read that was, what the hell are they doing? If they have the ability to, if they have the time to plant 350 million trees, what are they doing?
They're making a conscious
Yeah,
effort,
for
Marcus.
sure. They took time off work and stuff, but that was the first thing I was like, hey, really? They got nothing else to do? But then that's my problem. They're doing something
I'm
good.
sure they're doing other stuff. They're just, taking a little bit of time out of their day to make
Yeah,
a
for sure,
difference.
for sure. What I also then thought was that they need to do like some sort of Live Aid concert for Europe. instead of us saying, "Hey, we need to save the children in Africa," they need to save us now.
Wow.
They need to come over and smack us in the face and say, "Look what we've just done." I'm glad that they've broken the world record.
Although I feel like Live Aid was about raising money. I feel like they just need to come and coach us. We need some some teachers.
Yeah. How to plant a tree.
Exactly.
You can probably YouTube that. I YouTube everything.
Yeah, good point.
But I do
So,
want another
the
Live
bad.
Aid for whatever reason. I want Queen to come up on stage. And they're still around, yeah? Queen? I'm joking. I'm trying to liven the podcast up at the final moments. This is my time.
Okay, so you're up with the bad.
Yeah.
Marcus.
Okay. Oh. So, the bad for this week. Iceland has lost their first glacier. And what I mean by that is that the glacial status has been removed of, and I'll try and pronounce this correctly, Okiokul. Okiokul? Ojokul?
Yep, third time lucky, I think.
Potentially. I feel like the J's are yeah.
Yep.
And so that's a shame because obviously it just kind of proves that these glaciers are melting, etc.
How do you classify a glacier?
So funny you should ask, George. A glacier has to be at least 600 square miles of ice. And they also have to have quite a lot of thickness as well. I can't really remember. But they're effectively slow-moving, highly compact bits of snow and ice that have to be at least 600 square miles. And of course, this glacier is not that anymore. So effectively, it's just a big pile of ice. It's not gone forever. It's just not as big as it should be.
Right, so the whole thing isn't gone. It's just that it's lost its classification, which is obviously still terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's pretty sad. I guess that's what kind of happens with glaciers, in terms of they do melt, but over time. But I think at the speed that they are going, it's quite catastrophic. And I think what we do need to do, George, is we need to look into glaciers in the Arctic in another podcast for another day. Maybe, potentially.
Indeed. I like that idea.
Now, I picked the company in focus, and I actually love doing the company in focus, but maybe, George, if you wanted to read it and kind of almost be hit with some of the stuff, unless you wanted me to read it, it's up to you.
I can
Yeah,
read
do it.
Yeah, let's hit. I'll hit myself with.
Hit yourself with facts.
So our company in focus for this week is Fairphone. Now, it's important to remind everybody that we're not sponsored by this company. They've never been in touch with us, and we just pick these companies because we think they're cool and what they're doing is important. So that's why we picked our company in focus today, and it's Fairphone. They're a Dutch company. Marcus, you've blabbed on all podcast about how great the Netherlands is, and now you picked a Dutch company for the company in focus. I feel like you should just get citizenship, leave here forever.
Yeah, maybe I should. It's such a fun country to be in, mate. You know.
I think I'm just.
Yeah. Again, I was gonna make inappropriate jokes. That probably would not be appreciative, but it's a lot, more open to things.
Sure.
And also, like I said, because everyone's so wealthy, they have the ability to focus on sustainability. So that's probably why a lot of startups are sustainable startups are from the Netherlands. And it does help that the tax breaks for Dutch companies are very extensive. There is a reason why a lot of headquarters are in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, so on that note, Fairphone are a Dutch company making sustainable phones with apparently great tax breaks. So these phones are designed to last longer with modular capabilities. Instead of purchasing a brand new phone because the camera just got better, or when you bought the phone you didn't get the top line camera and now you want a top of the line camera, you've got the ability just to buy a module with a new camera in. Now the materials they use are sustainably sourced, and they've prioritized tracing their supply chain, so that essentially when they source these materials, they know exactly where they've come from, who they bought them off, and what those people that they bought them off are doing, which is quite an important part of sourcing and sustainably sourcing, because at the end of the day, even if you pretend to be sourcing, or at least have been told that you're sourcing from a sustainable source, it's not quite as effective as if you are actually tracing the supply chain back to the point of origin. And on top of this, they also have a focus on recycling and refurbishing old phones, which is really cool.
Yeah.
That's an impressive company. I love the idea of modular concepts.
Modular anything, yeah.
Yeah. Marcus and I had this idea once to
We'll tell them in another
onto the
podcast.
headphones.
Tell them in another podcast.
Okay.
But
Alright.
we've been hustling since young, you know.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like we should apologise to Fairphone for attributing their shout out to a very, very hard topic such as knife crime.
Wow, yeah, on the back end of by the way, you had to get through all that to get to this. If you're here now, the sort of like broken individual, I hope this gives you some solace. You poor person.
You see, because we didn't write a script at the beginning, we didn't know where it was going to turn. And so having a company in focus was obviously decided before. And yeah. So fairphone.com. Look into it. Enjoy. Props to you for being sustainable as a company. And hopefully someone else listening to this podcast can make something sustainable. A company that's sustainable. Mate, it's late here. It's 1:00 now in the morning.
Wow, yeah. Bedtime.
So, George, I love you, Mum.
Wait. Sorry.
Oh, I do this every time. Every time I do
It's
this.
becoming a trend.
Go on,
It's
mate.
becoming a trend.
Go on, plug us.
So, if you want to get in touch with us, you can now go to our website, iknownothingpodcast.com or iknownothing.info. You can also contact us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all of those you'll find us at I Know Diddly. That's I Know KNOW, not NOW. Just in case you wondered. DIDDLY. I Know Diddly.
Wicked. Is that it?
I think that's
I
us.
think that's us.
Thank you very much for listening. If you've got to this point, then I salute you, and you're one of the brave.
You're one of the brave. Okay. All right, George.
All right then.
Scotland. But carry on. See you, mate.
Bye.